19-year-old John E. Bingham wrote a letter to his uncle on April 21, 1945. The young man had been an eyewitness to John Wilkes Booth's assassination of President Abraham Lincoln at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., just a week prior. Here are the entire contents of that letter and the first-hand account of the assassination in his own words. Dear Uncle, you must excuse my negligence in not writing oftener of late, but the excitement which has prevailed for the last week has totally incapacitated me for any kind of labor. Day after day passed, and every day brought with it good news and a prospect of the speedy termination of the war. Our cup of happiness was filled to the brim, and nothing could exceed the excitement with which the news of the surrender of Lee's army was received. Mr. Lincoln had been pressed on several occasions to make a speech, and finally did, taking for his subject the future prospects of the country, the reconstruction of the Union, etc. I was present and heard it, although it was raining, and now when I think of it, I can almost see him delivering his address. On last Friday, just 1 week ago, I was told that Grant and wife would accompany the President to the theatre. I must confess that I never yet have seen Grant, and as I was anxious for a glimpse, I accompanied a couple of friends to the theatre. Considering the object of our going, we took greater pains in trying to get a full view of the box and its contents than in getting a good position for witnessing the performance. At about 8:30, the President entered, accompanied by his wife, Miss Harris, and Major Rathbone. We were all very much disappointed on not seeing General Grant, but we certainly had good cause to be thankful afterwards. Harper's Weekly contains a tolerable good description of the assassination, with the exception that the President and his wife occupied a different position, and that the assassin fired with his left hand. The assassination took place, I think, shortly after 10 o'clock. Shortly after the shot was heard, Booth sprang to the stage. As soon as he recovered himself, he drew a large knife and shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," the motto of Virginia. Looking up to a man seated near me, who afterwards proved an acquaintance, he said, "I have done it." By that time he had crossed the stage, and partly turning, he waved his dagger on high and shouted, "The South's avenged!" This was the last we saw of him. His face is impressed on my mind so strongly that I think I never will forget it. His eyes gleamed like fire, his skin almost white to transparency, and his jet black hair waving in accordance with his motions. But to continue. After hearing the motto, I thought that something serious had happened, and I, with the rest, rushed to the box. Such a sight as I saw there was enough to touch the heart of a savage. Mr. Lincoln was stretched on the floor with his head pillowed in the lap of Miss Laura Keene. His brains were slowly oozing out into her lap. Mrs. Lincoln was frantic, screaming, "Oh my God, they have killed him, they have killed him!" He was taken to a house opposite where everything was done, but to no avail. Hour after hour the crowd wailed and lingered, thinking perhaps he might be spared. But when they were told he is dead, they all turned away, each to his home. Some crying, some praying, but most of them cursing the wretch who took his life. I never saw anything that would compare with the obsequies of last Wednesday. The procession was more than 2 hours passing, and I have heard it spoken of, and do not doubt it myself, that there were 150,000 people in the avenue and 15th Street. I am exceedingly sorry to hear of Jim Carruthers' death, and sympathize with Phoebe Jency and all. The weather here is exceedingly pleasant. You can rest assured that Todd is safe. None but cavalry were engaged in that fight. Goodbye, your loving nephew, G. Bingham.